So everyone pretty much knows now that the M1 Pro chip is extremely fast. Like, stupid fast. And I made a whole video going over how much I love this computer and how fast it truly is. And I'm sure you've seen tons of videos going over the general speed of it, the video editing speed, the photo editing speed, all that kind of stuff. Even my own video went over these things. With a chip as fast as the M1 Pro, with as many GPU cores as it has, is the M1 Pro actually good at gaming? Now, Macs are notorious for being computers that are horrible at gaming. This is for a numerous amount of reasons, from the chipset to the fact that there's not a lot of games optimized for Mac. But really, with Apple Silicon here, is this actually good at gaming now? Alright, so before we proceed, the computer that we're using, the chip that we're using, is the M1 Pro with the 10-core CPU and a 16-core GPU. This is the 14-inch model. This is basically the top spec Pro chip that you can get. I'm not getting into Max territory, we're just talking about the M1 Pro. And how well does this perform with video games? So as you can see from this footage, I played a multitude of games on the MacBook Pro. Some from older games like Borderlands 2 all the way up to newer games like Hades. And they all performed pretty well for the most part. Games like StarCraft 2 and Diablo 3 that have a lot of assets and a lot of things going on screen do need to be jumped down in the resolution from the 4K that the monitor has all the way down to 1080. But with that, you do get 60 to 120 frames per second on that refresh rate. While games like Hades, I was able to play on full resolution on this computer and still hit 60 frames per second on average on the refresh rate. And if I drop the graphics quality down a little bit, I would get 120 frames per second, which is honestly surprising for this computer, and the game looks beautiful on the display. And even the bigger games that require me to bring the graphics quality down and the resolution down to 1080 in order to get 60 frames per second, those aren't really making the computer hot. That was one of my major concerns, was that the computer and the CPU were going to get extremely hot and you wouldn't want to be playing games for an extended period of time. But I kept checking it, and while the computer, yes, it did heat up, it never really got hot. And, more surprisingly, I never heard the fans really kick on. I knew that they were on because they were keeping the computer cool, but I didn't ever really hear them. And I stopped numerous times to just make sure I was in a quiet room to see if can I hear the fans right now? And even with my M1 MacBook Air, I was able to play games like Hades at a pretty good graphics quality and still get 60 frames per second, but it doesn't even match the quality that I can get out of the M1 Pro. And games that gave the M1 Air actually some trouble were games like TFT, which is not optimized for Apple at all, and because of that, the M1 Air would get pretty hot playing this game, and I would have the graphics quality brought down to low with the resolution at 1080. But on the M1 Pro, I have no heat issues. I'm able to bring the resolution up. I'm not at full 4K, but I'm close, and I get 60 frames per second out of the game with no heat issues at all. And with services like Game Pass, you can stream AAA games to your Mac through your web browser. And obviously that's very dependent on your internet connection. It does not matter about what chip that you have. But as you can see here, I was able to pretty much play anything on Game Pass without any issues. Had some buffering I had to do in the beginning when I would start a stream, so that way we would get the quality up to better than like 480p, pixelated. But after that buffering period, the game ran extremely well without really any issues. And obviously this chip is, overkill for this. But emulation is also an option on a Mac. Programs like OpenEmu make emulating things from like the GameCube or the N64 extremely easy. So, if you have the games and you're able to put them in there legally, you can play your games on the M1 Pro through OpenEmu. Honestly, this is overkill. You could do this on pretty much any Mac and you're not going to really have any issues, but still, it's a point to be brought up. Now, while I played everything I threw at it really well, does that make this a gaming laptop? No, not at all. But that's not what this computer is. This is a Mac. This is a work machine. It's a productivity machine. It's not a gaming laptop. For the price, it does not stand up to actual gaming laptops. If you are buying a computer to game, do not look at Macs. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of your money. And you should get something a little cheaper that's actually going to perform way better. But for someone like me that needs a work computer and travels a lot, or sometimes it's just not in my own apartment with my own gaming PC, it is nice to have the option to play StarCraft 2 with friends whenever I want, or, jump into Divinity, with some friends, or even just play Hades, because Hades is an amazing game and I want to play it all the time, basically. And with things like OpenEmu for emulation and Game Pass, it just makes the ability for Macs to be somewhat gaming computers to be more realistic. And no, it's not a gaming computer, it's not a gaming laptop, this is not a gaming chip. But it's the best gaming experience I've had on a Mac so far, And let's be honest, it's because of the M1 Pro chip. So can you imagine what the M1 Max is like? I kind of should probably get one and test it out. But anyway guys, that's everything I found. That's all my thoughts on this. Any questions on games on the Mac? If you want me to test anything, let me know, and I will reply to you right away. But other than that, let me know anything else you want to know about the M1 Pro or the new MacBook Pros, as I'm coming out with more videos on it as quickly as I can. But again, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in whatever video comes out next.